Right, afternoon, guys. Hope you're all well. Welcome to another session as far as computer architecture module content there is concerned. All right, so today what we want to do, I think, is to discuss some of the pertinent tasks that or activities that are relevant as far as task number 2 is concerned. I did provide feedback for task number 1. Should there be anyone who is not clued or naturally does not understand the kind of feedback that I gave them rather, please pop me a mail and we can always engage ourselves accordingly. We've had sessions before that have been recorded and that make these particular tasks quite lucid. I suggest you go back and watch these clips again. Today is going to be my last day discussing task number 2. The rest is going to be up to you. This is going to be a recorded session, naturally. If you guys are going to be having issues in terms of installation, in terms of configuration, I will refer you back to the clips I've uploaded on YouTube. Like I've said a couple of seconds ago, the clips have been very lucid in terms of what it is that you need to do, how it is that you need to do it. And by now, I'm assuming that all of you have got your clients and your servers distinctively running. What is left as far as today's session is concerned is just looking at configuring our DHCP, literally setting up the accounts, as well as enabling the connection between your client and your actual server. I think there could be a couple of students who might be having issues in terms of not having machines that they can use at home. I've sent communication to our PM, so we should get some kind of feedback, hopefully before the conclusion of the week. I think you should be able to pop into campus and be able to use the machines on campus, obviously in the lab, and naturally be able to complete your task before the natural due date. So if you've been following what we've been doing up until now, we have typically covered about 65%, if not more, of what the actual task is requiring of you. What I will leave for you guys to do on your own in terms of research is sort out the activity that requires you to create a map drive and then obviously successfully show a login on your domain using one of the users that you would have created. So like I said before, the clips that are there have been very lucid in terms of how to structure this particular task. And naturally, the bulk of you, if not everyone, should already have their virtual machines up and running. It's just a question of working with configurations. Your task is due on the 16th, if I'm not mistaken. And like we said before, please make sure that you submit on Teams and you use the Word version. Do not submit a PDF for this particular task. Please make sure you submit a Word document with your conclusive screenshots of each individual section that is relevant as far as the actual task there is concerned. Remember, the VC Learn platform is only applicable when it comes to you creating and typically generating the originality report, but it's not an official means of submission of your assignments as far as your particular certificate program there is concerned. So I cannot stress this more lucidly. Please make sure you submit on Teams, and please make sure you use the right format as far as a submission is concerned. So ultimately, like I said today, what we're going to be doing is looking at configuring our DHCP. After configuring our DHCP, we'll need to create the generic users or show you how that is distinctively done, and then link the actual client to the server. And then we should be good to go. Like I said before, I think the remaining 15 marks should be up to you in terms of your own research. You need to show up on that one as far as successful completion of the actual task is concerned. So with the POE, which I've mentioned again before in a previous session, you'll need to resubmit both tasks. So your marked task needs to be resubmitted. You also need to have a document that has the feedback that I've given you, and then you'll have the changed or edited or fixed assignment or task, whichever way you want to look at it. So you obviously will, per task, you'll have 3 distinctive documents: the original marked document, a document that lists the feedback that you're given or what you were asked to change or edit, and then the final document, which is the one that has all the edits that I would have distinctively indicated as far as the actual feedback there is concerned. Remember, we mentioned the fact that there is a cable part as far as the actual POE there is concerned, but I think we will put that on the back burner. We should get some kind of feedback, hopefully by the second week, if not the conclusion of the first week of October, so that we know exactly are we still going ahead with that, what are the formats we're going to be taking into consideration and so on, or is it going to be distinctively excluded as far as the completion of the actual POE is concerned. But watch out for that communication. I'll definitely give you a heads up in terms of what needs to happen as far as that particular part of the POE is concerned. The rest obviously is going to be a self-evaluation document that you'll need to naturally populate with the according content that is there. So as far as today's session is concerned, the last time we had sessions, like I said before, we configured our ADDS platform. We promoted it into a domain controller. So we've got a domain controller that is associated with our server platform. What is left over is configuring the DHCP and then obviously creating the users that we mentioned a little earlier on. So once you install your server, if you discover that you've got an icon that mimics what's on screen there, your yellow or orange triangle with the black exclamation mark, it's an indication that there is still some configuration that still needs to be done. Remember, we've mentioned before that once you've installed your server, it's not enough to make the machine a server. You need to add the roles. But again, those roles are not enough to make that particular machine a server. You still need to configure those accordingly. So the last configuration that we had, like I said before, was to promote the server into a domain controller. Now what we want to do is to create our DHCP scope. Remember, we've talked about DHCP before. If you look at the IPv4 clip, and if you also look at the network architecture exercise clip, where we looked at creating scopes, looking at the number of networks and so on. A scope is just the same thing as a range, literally. It's an address pool that you create that is then used for distribution. Remember, DHCP, Dynamic Host Configuration Protocol, its main purpose is to automatically assign IP addresses within a networked environment. So ultimately, what you then need to do for that automatic assignment to be successful, you naturally need to ensure that you create a pool first, or create a range first, or create a scope first that you will then use to look at that distinctive distribution that is there. So we're going to configure this. So you click on that icon, your yellow orange triangle there, and then we want to complete DHCP configuration. Once we select that, we get a wizard that you will need to use. Now, remember, what we essentially doing is to give this particular server the authority to function and act as a DHCP server. So this is the whole concept of authorization and committing this particular server to act and function as a DHCP server, which is obviously responsible for the automatic distribution of IP addresses, or automatic assignment of IP addresses within the network you'd have defined. So you're going to next that. You will use the following credentials option. It's already highlighted or selected for you. It'll show the actual domain as well as the user account that we're currently using. Remember, administrator rather is the one that you've got by default. So you leave that one as is, and then you select commit. And naturally, you've got a summary. And as you can see there, this particular server has been authorized to function as an actual DHCP server platform. So this has just looked at promotion or literally authorization. But again, you still need to create a scope that is then going to be used for the distribution of the IP addresses that you'd have defined. So we're going to close that. And naturally, as you can see, we no longer have that icon incorporated there. What that typically means now, we've done all the configuration that is necessary or that is relevant in terms of the roles that we've added. So we're going to select the DHCP server there on your left-hand side as far as your dashboard is concerned. Once the server is displayed on your display area there. You will need to then right click on it. And then from the context drop-down or options menu that appears there, you're going to select DHCP Manager, all right? So we're going to go with DHCP Manager. Right, and once we've done that, we've got another window that appears now that enables us to configure this particular server or to create our scopes accordingly. So if you look specifically at what you've got, it shows the actual server name, and then it shows the your domain that you've distinctively created. Remember, you will need to change the computer name. So just make sure you take cognizance of that. You will need to change the computer name. That's one of the functions or one of the questions or activities in the tasks associated with the POE there. And you'll need to change the actual computer name as far as your server there is concerned. So you've got the server, and then you've got the actual domain that is there. Now remember, with your IPs, you've got either IP version 4 or IP version 6. So once you expand that particular section, or you use the drop-down menu there for your server, you find IPv4 and IPv6 there incorporated. If you discover that you're sitting with a red icon for both of these, it means that you haven't authorized the server to become a DHCP server. So make sure that you configure that accordingly to avoid any discrepancies there. You will again expand the drop-down menu there for the IPv4. And what you'll then do is you right click where it's labeled IPv4 there, and there's a context drop-down or options menu that appears. From there, you're going to then select a new scope. So we are trying to define the pool associated with our IP address configurations there, or associated with our DHCP server. As far as the actual wizard is concerned, you can next that, and then you'll need to give the scope an actual name. So we're going to call this task 2 scope. You can naturally give a description or leave it blank. It's all up to you. The reason why probably a description would be relevant is that you'd know specifically what the scope was for, or what was it designed for, created for. And again, if another network administrator pops in and tries to understand exactly what's happening as far as your initial configuration is concerned, that description can give them a heads up in terms of what it is that you intended, on what it is that you typically configured as far as your actual network is concerned. So you're going to give the scope a name. Once that is done, you're going to next that, and this is where we need to define our range. All right, and our server is 192.168.20.2. So naturally, you'd want to assume that your range should start from 3 onwards. But if you want to accommodate for some semblance of growth, you might want to leave out a couple of IPs associated with your distinctive scope. That will then probably enable you to add in another server at a later stage, or add in another router, add in another switch. Remember, these particular devices, gadgets or components will normally need static or automatic assignment of IPs for a better type of configuration as far as your actual network environments would go. So what we can do is probably leave out a bit of leeway in terms of growth. So we're going to start at 192.168.20, possibly .10 there. And they haven't mentioned which range or where your range should end. So we can assume that, for argument's sake, we can go 192.168.20, possibly maybe .120. And then we leave everything as is. As you can see, your subnet mask is automatically populated there. If you've got a custom subnet mask, then obviously you can change it accordingly there. But if you haven't changed anything, then naturally the default subnet mask for class C is automatically incorporated there. You're going to next that. Now, as far as the assessment is concerned, they've mentioned that you need to reserve the first 10 IPs associated with your range. So our range is going to start from 10 to 120. But within that same range, we need to reserve the first 10 IPs. So it means that when we start running our client, is going to start at a specific the first available IP is going to be defined by obviously the exclusion that you've incorporated there. So in our instance, we will incorporate 192.168.20. Remember, we started at 10, and we want to reserve the first 10. So we're going to end at 20. So it's going to go 192.168.20.20 there. All right, and then we're going to add. So once you've done that successfully, it'll show you that excluded address range starts at 192.168.20.10 all the way to 192.168.20.20. So these are the first 10 IPs within the range that we initially defined. So it means that the first available IP that's going to be applicable to your client is going to be 192.168.20.21. Because naturally the first 10 have been distinctively excluded. You're going to next that. Then by default, remember your IP addresses are leased. You don't literally have an IP address forever when it comes to these generic client server environment networks. You've got a lease period associated with your IP, and naturally you can define what that lease period would be as far as configurations would go. You've got it by default within the Windows Server platform as 8 days. We're going to leave it as is. You will next that. It'll show you that you've got your DHCP configurations that are there. You're going to next that. And then we've got a gateway, remember. A gateway is the same thing as your router. And the IP address for this gateway, according to your assessment, is 20.1. And then once you've incorporated accordingly there, you'll need to add it. Once it's been added, you're going to next all the way through until you distinctively activate and finish that particular setup as far as your wizard is concerned. So you're going to finish that. And the moment you've done that, you'll discover that we've got a scope that has been incorporated there. So we've got a distinctive scope, and then it will show you address pool, your address leases, reservation, scope, options, and then policies. So we're going to click on address pool there. And then it will show you that as far as the actual range is concerned, for distribution, you've stated 10 all the way to 120. But within that same range, you've got 10 distinctive IP addresses that have been excluded from distribution as far as your specific setup there is concerned, which is obviously going to be 10 all the way to 20 there. So you've got an address pool that you've got incorporated as far as your distinctive scope platforms there are concerned. All right, so that's how you'd configure your DHCP. And this is one of the screenshots that you will need to incorporate as far as your Word document there is concerned. And if you check closely as far as the actual assessment would go, this is looking specifically at activity number 2, which is a 10-mark question. So just by including that screenshot associated with your task, you've already added 10 marks as far as your specific assessment there is concerned. All right. So the next thing that we want to do is now create the users and the actual groups associated with our environment or domain. Remember, when you deal with Active Directory, you're looking at a directory-based type of network where you're looking at objects representing users, groups, and devices like computers and printers within your network that are typically are created in that distinctive environment. So what you want to do, I'm going to close this. Our DHCP is configured accordingly. What we want to do now is select your ADDS platform, which is your domain controller. And within that domain controller, again, once your server has been displayed, you're going to right click on it. And then from the options menu or drop down or context menu that appears there, you're going to select Active Directory users and computers. So remember, in our particular instance, we need to create organizational units that represent specific groups that obviously contain distinctive users as far as our environment there is concerned. So you're going to select Active Directory users and computers. Once that is done accordingly, another window appears that shows you your domain name and configurations thereof. So in this particular instance, you've got KG incorporated there. We're going to expand that And within that domain, we've got these particular containers incorporated there. So what we want to do now, you're going to right click on your domain name there. Context menu appears. You're going to then go and select new. Another drop-down menu appears. You're going to select organizational unit. All right. So you'll select, you right-click on your distinctive domain name. Context menu appears. You're going to select new. Another context menu, drop-down menu appears. You'll then select your organizational unit. So as far as your assessment there is concerned, I think you're going to go with OU staff, if I'm not mistaken. And in the industry, it's applicable for you to make sure you leave this unticked, or you leave it ticked rather. Why? Because in certain instances, you might find that you might inadvertently delete a group or an organizational unit that you've created, and that could cause a bit of discrepancy as far as network usage and configuration and access is concerned. But I suggest that when you're conducting this particular assessment, just to avoid certain issues where you might discover that you used the incorrect name, or you spelled it incorrectly, or you put it in the wrong environment, you will need to untick protect container from accidental deletion, so that should you need to delete and start afresh, you shouldn't have any distinctive issues as far as your task is concerned. So we're going to select that. And as you can see, your OU staff is within the same level as every other container associated with your task or associated with your distinctive domain. Now, you will need to create other OUs that are within the OU staff. So it's very important for you to make sure that you don't create the remainder of OUs that have been mentioned in your assessment on the same level as OU staff. So what it means is every time you're working with a specific container, you will need to highlight that container, right-click on it, and within that container, remember, you want to then create a new organizational unit. All right. And what is that new organizational unit going to be called as far as your assessment goes? The first one is going to be OU marketing. We're going to OK that. And then again, we go back to OU staff, right click on it, go new. We create another organizational unit. This one is going to be called OU sales reps. We're going to OK that. Again, OU staff, new, we're going to select organizational unit there. The next one is going to be OU managers. We're going to OK that. And then the last one is going to be OU groups. So we're going to go new, organizational unit, OU groups there. And then we are going to untick that and then OK. All right, so as you can see now, we've got marketing all the way to groups within the OU staff. So it's not, these particular OUs, organizational units or containers, are not on the same level as staff. They're within the staff environment as far as your particular setup there is concerned. And then you're asked to create, obviously, a user or a group of users within a specific organizational unit. Specifically, we're looking at sales rep there. So I'm going to just select. I'll show you how to create one, because obviously the process is repetitive. So you're going to select your sales rep, right click on it. You're going to go new, and this time we're going to select user from the drop down menu that appears, and then our user's first name is going to be Roderick, and the surname there is Takawira. And login name is going to be RTAK, like that. Right, so this is literally the same procedure, really, that is undertaken when your account is created on campus as far as the VC domain there is concerned. Now, naturally, you're going to be using obviously a student number and so on, but the process is one and the same thing. Once you've verified that you've entered the correct name, right spelling, you're going to next that. And then this is where you can incorporate the actual password. So they've given you password 1 there with a capital P and an @. And then you've got a list of options that are there. User must change password at next logon. So this is exactly what you experience when you access computer systems on campus in first semester, where you were typically given a password 1 as a generic a password for logging in, but the moment you entered your student number and obviously the associated password, the system asked you to create your own as far as the whole login process there is concerned. So this is what I typically this is all about. You can have certain instances where users don't change passwords, but obviously in our environment, that's not applicable, because as long as you know someone's student number, you can log in as them because the passwords are all the same. So it's more applicable in environments where security is not of the essence, but obviously in the vice versa is true, where you find that, okay, look, if you're looking at something that needs to be secure, something that doesn't need to be jeopardized as far as access to content, access to resources, and so on, you will obviously need to ensure that the user needs to change their password the next time they log on. We're going to next that. You're given a distinctive summary of what it is that you've created. Once that is done, and you're right with that, as you can see, we've got that particular individual at the domain that has been created there. We finish it, and then we're good to go. Your user has been distinctively created. So obviously the process is repetitive for the remaining 2 individuals. If I'm not mistaken, it should be 2, because it's 3 in total. And then you'll need to, before you create the other groups, you'll now need to make sure that you configure what time these individuals log in. So as far as log on is concerned, they've mentioned weekdays from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. as far as configurations would go. So this is a way you can also restrict access, and a way that makes it easier for you to run audit trails should need be, in terms of determining who accessed the system, when did they access the system, and what it is that they did as far as the actual system access there is concerned. Remember, we've mentioned the AAA before, which is your authentication, authorization, and auditing or accounting. Authentication deals with your access. Authorization deals with permissions and rights. And then your auditing or accounting deals with checking what the specific account or profile or user has done on the system or network, dependent on the configuration that you've got. So we want to set up a login. So you're going to right click on your user. And then from the context menu that appears, you're going to select properties. So from here, this is where you can also discover the whole concept of maybe resetting passwords. I think most of you might have been in instances where you've either logged in more than 3 times with the incorrect password. You get locked out of the system. You might end up needing to have your password reset. This is the whole process of resetting your password. So you just right click on the user, go to your reset password option from the context menu that appears. You type out your new password. And then you obviously leave user must change password at next logon. And should your account be locked, your administrator would then select unlock user's account and then click on OK. So obviously when you dash off to the computer system, you can then use the new password that you've been given. Normally it's always set back to password 1, especially if you're looking at it from our campus scenario, and then naturally change the password accordingly during that login process. So that's how you look at resetting passwords and unlocking accounts as far as your systems are concerned. So naturally, you're going to go back, right click on your user, you're going to go to properties. And then from properties, as far as the window is concerned, we're going to select the account option. And from account, you'll see the log on hours that we need to now define. All right. So this is obviously going to be for every individual that is within that distinctive group there. So we're going to select log on hours. And as you can see, everything is permitted. So what we want to do now is to highlight the entirety of Sunday. So you're going to click and drag across. And remember, Sunday is not permitted. So we're going to select log on denied. We're going to do the same thing for the entirety of Saturday, because remember, it's only weekdays. Click and drag. and then you select log on denied. And then we've been told that it's from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. So we need to then click and drag up until 8 there, all the way down to Monday to Friday. This particular time is not permitted. Same difference would go from 5 onwards. So your 5 starts there, click and drag down, and this is also not permitted. All right, so now we've clearly defined what the log on time is. And if you want to have it displayed accordingly, just click, drag across, drag all the way down. And then you'll see here right at the bottom there, you'll have a summary of what the login process is all about. Monday through Friday from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m., which means that we've successfully defined when these particular individuals can log in and what time they're supposed to be on the actual network or systems they're using. Once you've defined that accordingly, you select OK, then you're good to go as far as that particular part is concerned. And then you click on that again, and we're sorted. All right, so that's that in terms of the actual user. They've mentioned now that when it comes to your, we need to now create groups within the groups OU. So you've got staff, marketing, managers, and sales reps. So in the groups OU, we are going to select, so we're going to go here, and then we're going to go to the groups OU, and within it, we right click again, context menu, new. This time we're not selecting OU or user. We're going to be selecting group. And what is our group name going to be? So it's going to be GRP. The first one is going to be staff. Then they've mentioned that the group scope is going to be global. Security type is going to be security as well. So you're going to OK that once done. And then within the same organizational unit, you're going to create another group. This time, this one is going to be called marketing. Again, global and security, you leave as is, so you're going to OK that. And then your distinctive managers is going to be global. So the first one was actually universal and security, but that's all well and good. You can adjust it accordingly when you're doing it on your machines there. So the next one is going to be a new group again. So this time we're going to go GRP. What is our group name going to be? It's going to be managers. And this one is going to be global security, leave as is. We OK that. And then the last one is going to be, so we're going to new group there. Our last one is going to be sales reps. So we're going to have GRP. Sales reps there, and then global and security. I think you can have global and security for the previous three, and then the first one you change it to universal and security. So we're gonna then OK that, and then we're good to go. So we've got our 4 there, staff. So we've got staff. So let's just see the properties associated with staff. So this is supposed to be universal actually. So we're gonna just right click, and then from the property section, we OK that. All right, sorted. So the other thing that you then need to do is then they've mentioned that add the created users to the relevant groups. So what it would then mean is that the users that you created, which is Roderick and whatnot, you then need to add them to the relevant groups, and then you need to add marketing managers and sales to the staff group there. So let's see. Our sales rep, Roderick is in our sales rep, right? So we need to add him to the sales rep group. So if you go to your, we need to add to a group. So we're going to right click on the user, add to a group. What is our group name called? I think that's going to be sales reps because he's already, so sales rep. And then we check the name if we've got that correct. And then once you find it underlined there, it shows that the name does exist, or the actual group does exist. You okay it, and then it'll show you successfully completed. Take a screenshot of that as part and parcel of what you need to incorporate. You okay that. And remember, once you've completed the group setup, you also need to take a screenshot of this as well. All right. So we now need to distinctively add marketing managers, sales rep to the staff group. So we're going to have marketing managers, sales reps. We're going to need to add to a group. What are we adding these? What group are we adding is going to be staff. We check the name if that actually exists. Yes, it does. And then we click on OK. You get that screenshot, no, that particular message rather. You take a screenshot of that, and then you are good to go. All right, so that particular part, as far as creation of the users and the groups there is done and dusted. The only thing that you obviously need to then add on, like I was mentioning earlier on, is adding the concurrent users that are there. We just use one user because it's one and the same thing. For the login as well, for the logon hours, it's one and the same thing. It's repetitive. So once you do it for, so obviously you'll need to do it for everyone. But as far as your screenshot is concerned, just showing a screenshot for one particular user is more than enough, because that already indicates and shows that you're capable of configuring it accordingly. What it typically looks at generically there is just it's a repetitive process. So you want to avoid it being cumbersome as far as your specific setup there is concerned. All right. So do we have any questions associated with that? I think pretty straightforward as far as configuration there is concerned. All right. So done and dusted as far as that there is concerned. What we want to then look at is having your client be part of the domain. So successfully have the client join the domain. So what we will need to do now is, let me just start my client here. So we're going to run the client, and then I'll show you the actual screen. Let me just so you'll need to leave your server running. So both machines need to be running at the same time in order for there to be a successful joining or connection of client and server. So while your server is running or is on, you'll need to then start up your client and then configure settings there accordingly as far as configurations there is concerned. So let's see if we can successfully have our client start there. I'm going to share this in a couple of seconds. So that's our client, hopefully starting up anytime this year. discrepancies of running machines on low RAM. All right, so I didn't incorporate a password there. Just same difference for your installs as well. Please make sure you just leave your password section blank there during your installation. Obviously not applicable when you're running the server, because you'll need to naturally incorporate a password. Stick to password 1 just to avoid you having to forget, because I've had a couple of instances where a couple of candidates incorporate their own passwords and only to discover that they've forgotten which password that they've used for the domain, and so on and so on and so on. So just stick to password 1 with a capital P. At least that's universal across the board, and we avoid the whole discrepancy of forgetting whichever passwords that we use as far as this particular setup there is concerned. So obviously, once your client starts, and if you've successfully created your scope and successfully configured your DHCP, you will discover that it should automatically pick up the actual domain that you've got from the actual DC. And then once you run ipconfig on the client, you should find that an IP address within the actual scope that you initially defined should be typically displayed as far as your specific setup there is concerned. So you're just going to wait for this to completely log in. Like I said before, this is what you will normally experience if you're going to be using machines that don't have adequate RAM there. So just to avoid discrepancies, just make sure you've got enough incorporated there. Like I said before, on a 4 gig machine, still applicable, but process is going to be rather slow unnecessarily. So just take heed on that distinctive note there. So once this runs accordingly, it should be able to pick up the actual network or the actual domain that we initially created, and then in a moment or so we'll run the ipconfig function there for you to actually see if it's successfully gotten an IP from your DHCP server. So there you have it. As you can see, the moment this happens, it means that there's a successful link without even doing anything. Do you see that? There's a successful link between client and server. So you haven't done anything. Your server is running currently. You've configured it appropriately, and then naturally now you'll discover that you've just set up your client. You've just switched it on, and automatically now it's already picking up that there is a server within the network. It's picking up on the actual domain name, and naturally you've got connectivity incorporated there. So you're just going to select yes there, and then we'll run ipconfig for us to see if it actually managed to successfully get an IP address from your DHCP setup that is there. So once again, please go back to the clips that we've recorded before in terms of how to ensure that you've got internal network settings incorporated for both client and server, just to avoid any discrepancies associated with basic connectivity there. So let's see if we can run ipconfig so long. So we're going to go CMD there. All right, enter. All right, so let's go ipconfig /o. At the moment we get some kind of replies there. Yeah, machine's rather slow, should automatically populate content. Not in that fashion, but we'll get there, we'll get there. So as you can see, your IP version 4 address there is 192.168.20.21, which is the first applicable IP within the range that we initially defined. So if you remember well, we had 192.168.20.10 all the way to .20. But within that same range, we mentioned that we are reserving the first 10, which is .10 to .20. So obviously .21 becomes our distinctive default go-to. So showing you there that it's found the Kincaid.g.com domain. You've got an actual IP address there. The subnet mask is incorporated by default. The gateway, which we defined earlier on, 192.168.20.1, and then as well as the actual server, which is the one that you've initially configured, which is 192.168.20.2. So that is how you'd go about it. You obviously need to take a screenshot of this, because this is now showing you that an actual IP address from the initial scope that you initially defined has been gotten as far as or has been assigned as far as the actual client there is concerned. What remains now, is going to minimize that, is to then enable this particular client to join the domain. All right. So it's while it's able to see the domain, we'll still need to make sure that the client joins the domain, so that you can then log into that domain using any one of the users that you initially created earlier on. So what we will do is we will select your Explorer icon, and then obviously once that is displayed accordingly, you've got this PC section. We're going to right click on this PC and then select from the context menu that appears. We're going to go and select properties, and then from there we will set it up accordingly. So you've got that incorporated. So you've got this PC set up there. We're going to right click on this PC, and then from the menu that appears all the way down, you've got properties. And then once you select properties, another window should appear. Again, anytime this year. And then you're going to select advanced system settings. So if you do this on your server, for changing the computer name, you just select a computer name there, and then where it says rename this computer, you'll select change. And then I think for your server, they've mentioned that your server should be labeled as domain controller 1. So when you run this process on the server, you'll need to change the computer name there to domain controller 1. So that's how you change your computer name. when you're running it as far as the actual server platform is concerned. So for us, we're going to select computer name, and then we'll go and select change as far as the actual client is concerned. And then we will need to add a domain. Now, remember, I've mentioned this before, that if you use the home edition of Windows 10, you will not have this option because you can only work with work groups. The moment you want to join domains, or the moment you want to work with domains, the appropriate additions to use would be professional or enterprise, whichever way you want to incorporate. So you're going to then select a domain there. And then from domain, we'll need to type out the domain that we've got, which is Kincaid G in this particular instance. And then we okay that. And then once we've done that successfully, it should then ask for credentials. Which are these credentials going to be? Obviously, the administrator username, and then the generic password that we create, which is password 1. So you're going to type out administrator. So you need to actually, before you type that out, or probably as you type that out, or as you populate that content, take a screenshot of that and incorporate as part and parcel of the relevant task there. So you're going to go administrator, and then our password is password 1 with a capital P. And then once we've done that or incorporated that successfully, the moment you click on OK, we should be able to get a message that mentions that you've successfully joined the kincaidg.com domain. Give it a couple of seconds. Shouldn't take this long, obviously, if you're using an applicable machine. Right, so there you have it. Welcome to the Kincaid.com domain. You'll take a screenshot of this before you select OK. All right, so there you have it. Literally, what I've just done here, guys, is plug in 75% of the work you as far as your particular task is concerned. What will be left over for you to do on your own and your own research is going to be activity number 5, which is a 10-mark activity, and then activity number 6, which is a 5-mark activity. All right. Like I said before, should you be having any issues in terms of configuration, having any issues in terms of installation, I will refer you to the clips and the sessions that we've already had. Like I said before, this is my last session technically discussing anything to do with task number 2, because we're done and literally dusted. If you require assistance associated with those last 15 marks, I will gladly tell you I do not know, because you need to do your own research, guys, as far as this particular setup is concerned. But anything else in terms of configuration, I'll be there to assist. But like I said before, most often than not, I will refer you back to the videos that we've already uploaded there. Please make sure you do yourselves a solid and look through them. Like I've mentioned right at the beginning of the session, these clips are as lucid as distinctively possible. So please, guys, make sure that you look through this content. I wasn't too pleased, unfortunately, with the marks for task number 1, because we discussed that in detail again, but unfortunately it looked like most individuals rushed that particular submission and didn't take the time to go through these particular clips again. And remember, you're in a bit of an advantage, because had we been running face-to-face sessions, we wouldn't be recording anything. But now we've got a record of the content that we're undertaking, and you've got it at the tips of your fingers, really, in terms of access. All you have to do is just go through and watch the clips again on the channel I created there for you, and then you should be good to go. So please, guys, And not just for this module as well, even for web development, make sure you go through the content that we've uploaded, because like I said before, trying to avoid sounding like a broken record, but you've got lucid explanations, very lucid explanations of what is there. And like I said before, I've literally elucidated to the best of what's possible in terms of explanations there. So please make sure that you look through that content again, just so that we are all on the same page as far as your particular setups there is concerned. I doubt we have questions, but I'm going to humor the real. I want you guys to humor me really. Do we have any questions as far as this particular task is concerned? Any questions as far as task number 2 is concerned? Questions, contributions? Right. I believe we are good to go. So please, guys, go through content again. I think something's coming on chat here. Just give me 2 seconds. Let's see what's happening. Who has got their hand up? Just give me 2 seconds while I get this up and running. I need to check something on chat here. Okay, what's going on with my chats now? I can't see anything. Okay, so Renewa, are we able to email the task due date for some kind of feedback? Yes, you can send it through. I can give you a heads up on probably what's relevant there. But like I said before, you've got all you need in terms of our recorded clips. But please feel free, Renewa, there to pop me a mail. We'll engage ourselves accordingly. All right, Emmanuel is sorted. I'm assuming Samuel, Londani, Bijesh, Dylan, Krishnal, Dean, Ethan, and Keenan are also sorted there. Not to forget Troy. Any questions or contributions here, guys, before we call it a day? Okay, cool. Looks like the consensus is we're good to go. Let's call it a day, guys. Stay safe, keep smiling, stay positive. We will see you in the next session. I think what we'll do now is probably just discuss cabling as part and parcel of your module material, and then probably just entertain anything else that you might not have understood when it comes to the actual entirety of the module at large there. I think cabling is what is left over. We've discussed security before. I think you've looked at that in computer architecture, but again, we'll still need to jog your memory accordingly. So we might look at security again as far as the actual module content is concerned. But as far as the actual task for your POE goes, you are sorted for this module. All right. Anyways, see you guys. Thanks for attending. Stay safe.